From Grand Isle.
It's getting gutted, and that's a skyscraper right there. Oh!
To Lake Charles.
Trees fell on cars, trees fell on houses.
To the Florida Panhandle. Hurricanes in 2020 spread destruction and misery. Louisiana fell in the cone of uncertainty 8 times. 4 storms made landfall in the state. Cristobal, Laura, Delta, Zeta. In an unforgettable year.
I was leaning on the wall of my house and I could feel it rumbling.
With a record-breaking 30 named storms. Now, all signs point to another busy season. And there's no reason to believe the Gulf Coast won't be a target again. Fox 8 News presents a special report, Weathering the Storm 2021, sponsored by Egan Insurance and Bromart. Now, here is Fox 8 Chief Meteorologist David Bernard.
The 2020 hurricane season was one for the record books, with the exception of just one county in Florida. Every county from Texas to Maine was under a watch or warning for either wind or water at some point last year. And at the center of it all was Louisiana. Storm after storm threatened our region with several near catastrophic misses. But our luck eventually ran out as Hurricane Zeta came roaring to shore in late October. Meteorologist Nicandra Norwood takes us back.
As the rest of the country geared up for Halloween, it was howling winds that once again threatened Louisiana and the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
I just say, well, gonna get a little rain, a little wind, it's gonna be over. Never did I expect for it to be the way it was. And as watching it, I really became afraid.
Hurricane Zeta roared ashore at 4 in the afternoon, October 28th at Cocodrie as a major Category 3 with winds at 115 miles per hour.
There goes my roof.
Causing dramatic damage in nearby Pointe-au-Chien and breaking a modern-era sense of comfort that big storms don't hit Louisiana so late in the season.
It shook the house. When they blew from the south, they shook the house real bad. And then they blew from the north, they shook the house real bad.
The staggering forward speed of 24 miles per hour may have helped. Most dealt with the worst of the fast-moving storm for minutes rather than hours.
Look, it was scary. It was scary. And listen, that was only like an hour or two. To think that you would stay and endure that, there ain't no way.
87-mile-per-hour sustained winds were measured at a non-official gauge near Golden Meadow with a peak gust of 110 miles per hour. A similar reading came near the Orleans-St. Bernard Parish line, 112 miles per hour from an unofficial gauge there.
It's hard when your whole life savings goes to nothing, you know? It really is.
The fast pace may have limited storm surge as well. Highway 1 was still overtopped, cutting off Port Fourchon and Grand Isle as storm tides pushed water levels to just around 3 feet. The Mississippi coast saw the highest water levels, over 9 feet in Hancock County and almost 11 feet near Ocean Springs. The worst of Zeta moved over the most populated areas. The eye wall blasted Jefferson Parish, with the center of the storm moving right across Orleans. Golden sun rays illuminated the Superdome in the calm of Zeta's eye. Arguably, that's the first time the center of a hurricane passed directly over the city since 1947.
I feel like every time y'all go lie to me, and all of a sudden a massive wind gust just comes and blows me back a little.
That wind left nearly 750,000 customers without power in Louisiana and Mississippi, some up to a week or more.
Nothing to it. Stayed for Gustav, and it was off for 4.5 or 5.5 days, so I'm hoping this is a lot better than Gustav.
Zeta continued on up the East Coast, causing power outages and damage, eventually totaling $4.4 billion. Zeta led to 3 deaths in the area, 1 from electrocution in Orleans Parish, 1 drowning, and 1 traffic fatality in Mississippi. Nicandra Norwood, Weathering the Storm.
Initially, Zeta was deemed a strong Category 2 storm, but later upgraded to a major hurricane in post-storm analysis. It was the 4th Louisiana landfall in 2020, tying 2002 for most storms to strike in a single season. On the other hand, Laura was one of the strongest hurricanes of the 2020 season, and it made a devastating landfall in southwest Louisiana in late August of last year. It plowed ashore in Cameron Parish as an intense Category 4. Here's Zach Fridella.
Laura left sheer devastation across southwest Louisiana.
Nothing, tree. Few blocks.
Which could linger for years.
I am not going to rebuild here. Somebody will.
Laura started just like many hurricanes do, as a weak tropical depression approaching the Lesser Antilles. Eventually, the storm strengthened into Tropical Storm Laura. Laura literally took a trip over all the major islands in the Caribbean, including Puerto Rico, Haiti, and Cuba. This led to Laura entering the Gulf as a struggling tropical storm. What happened thereafter is yet another classic example of rapid intensification in the Gulf. Laura literally was only a minimal hurricane just a day and a half prior to landfall. Notice how the storm went from hurricane Category 1 to a 150 miles per hour Category 4 storm, all within about 24 hours of impact. This made Laura the strongest storm to impact the state of Louisiana since the last island hurricane in 1856. Mike Brennan with the National Hurricane Center says rapid intensification is such a challenge for forecasters.
We were forecasting even in Laura some pretty high intensification rates, but as usual, the atmosphere does things faster and sooner than we think sometimes, and that's why anytime you have that rapid change in intensity, even in the watch warning time frame, much less without if you're going 3 to 4 days out when more of the evacuation decisions are being made. That's such a huge challenge that we saw again for Laura.
That challenge in forecasting is what we always worry about here in New Orleans. A major metropolitan area needs at least 48 hours to evacuate. Rapid intensification in storms is occurring more frequently, with the main factor being above normal to at times record-breaking water temperatures in the Gulf over the past decade or so. You can see those above normal water temperatures are already developing heading into the 2021 season. For forecasters, there is certainly a need for better modeling, especially in regards to storm surge inundation. National Hurricane Center Director Ken Graham says this year, a new form of surge modeling will be implemented.
We evacuate really mainly because of that storm surge. It's the water. I mean, historically, 90% of the fatalities is because of water. So as a result, we have completely upgraded our storm surge model. We're excited about this, and for a couple reasons. We now can put detailed information about the storm structure, the actual size of the storm, the structure of the wind field into that model. So we're not only going to get more accurate information, it's going to be further out in time. This is a key because right now we put out that storm surge modeling and the inundation mapping about 48 hours ahead of time. That's before tropical storm force winds. Now, for more confident systems, we can do it 60 hours out.
In the end, Laura will go down in history for setting multiple records for the state and the Gulf. The storm's rate of intensification of 65 miles per hour in a 24-hour period is tied for the fastest in the Gulf of Mexico.
Laura's 150-mile-per-hour winds tie it for the 5th most intense U.S. landfall in terms of wind speeds. Well, modern forecasting has certainly come a long way, but as Shelby Latino explains, Hurricane Sally proved to be a nightmare for meteorologists with its slow, erratic approach to the northern Gulf Coast.
It was 5 to 8 hours of solid, the house twisting and groaning and things hitting the house that sounded like bowling balls.
Communities from Mobile to Destin bore the brunt of Hurricane Sally as it made landfall near Gulf shores.
Everything is underwater.
With max winds at 105 miles per hour, days of rain from the storm sitting just offshore.
This just crawled like a baby learning to walk. It stayed there forever.
And the ultimate landfall led to some locations receiving over 20 inches of rain related to Sally.
The entire neighborhood's flooded. Waves are pounding the back of the house.
Initially, Sally began producing tropical storm force winds near the southern tip of Florida on its way into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. The storm crawled slowly toward the northern Gulf Coast, taking advantage of sporadic breaks in wind shear to rapidly intensify, weaken, and ultimately reach Category 2 status. During this time, southeast Louisiana found itself in the cone for the 5th and not the last time of the season. The potential track was also a particularly bad one for us. A slow-moving storm approaching from the east makes for a worst-case scenario, threatening to push maximum water into our east-facing shores, Lake Borgne and Lake Pontchartrain. As Jamie Rohn from the National Hurricane Center explains, we should always be wary of storms like Sally.
The slow-moving storms are always bad news. Bad news, because they tend to be more erratic and can make sudden changes when they do move, or they are going to produce a ton of water no matter what, rain or storm surge.
That very concern, storm surge, led to folks outside the levee system being evacuated.
And it just makes good sense. Get out the way.
But as the storm got closer and slowed to a stall, the forecast became more fuzzy and less clear. One local woman actually evacuated the West Bank to ride out Hurricane Sally at her sister's condo in Orange Beach, a barrier island extremely vulnerable to storm surge. She soon realized that was a mistake.
The winds are beating up against the windows so bad you can't even see your balcony.
So, lessons learned? Despite all the advances we've made in forecasting, a slow-moving storm can still really throw a wrench in both intensity and track forecasting, as it is more easily manipulated by the environment around it. And a slow-moving storm approaching from our east is worth every precaution, because Sally could have been our biggest local disaster of the season had it stayed on course.
In 2020, Zeta set a new record for the latest major hurricane landfall on the United States coastline. Hurricane Zeta moved across southeast Louisiana on October 28th as a strengthening Category 3. This surpasses the 1921 Tampa Bay hurricane, which held the prior record on October 25th.
Ahead, the latest hurricane outlook for 2021 after last year's record-breaking season.
Seeing it in that condition was very difficult.
And people still homeless after Hurricane Laura 9 months later. We travel to Lake Charles, where in the midst of destruction, there are stories of recovery. Fox 8 News is helping you get ready for a new hurricane season with Weathering the Storm 2021. Chief Meteorologist David Bernard will be back in a moment.